Okay, so let's take a look at the equipped questions 4 and 5. I'm in the Little Atheist book on page 60. So these are two philosophers. So now we're headed back into the realm of philosophy. Philosophy is not easy to understand. I told you about my college philosophy class. Some of the things that we talked about. I thought I had. So I remember my professor, who was brilliant and very engaging. Didn't have a whole lot of ability in philosophy, but she said this. She said, if this is a chair, and this is a chair, and this is a chair, there must be some property called chairness. And then I remember spending an entire class period discussing the topic of, do trees have rights? I don't know. But I'd rather talk about human rights, maybe, but, whatever. So maybe that's just the social studies teacher. So yeah, philosophy can be difficult to understand. So we're talking about, first about Benedict Spinoza. So what was Benedict Spinoza's objection to miracles, and why was he dead wrong? So first of all, what was his objection? Yeah.
Natural laws are immutable.
Natural laws are immutable. They are unchanging. Let's read first from page 204. So this is the actual logical argument by Spinoza. Miracles are violations of natural laws. Natural laws are immutable. It is impossible to violate immutable laws. Therefore, miracles are impossible. So if 1 is true, and if 2 is true, and if 3 is true, then 4 necessarily is true. So let's talk about this. What is wrong with that logical argument? Yes?
One's proof that natural laws are immutable.
Yeah. How do we know for sure that natural laws are immutable? God's laws are not necessarily immutable. And creation is an example of that, right? He overpowered natural law to create something out of nothing. Normally, as the great philosopher Lee Andrews said, nothing comes from nothing. Nothing never could. But something did come. And then the other thing is that natural laws don't cause anything. They describe things, but they are not in themselves a cause. And then while not changing the laws of nature, they are overcome every day, right? At least for some period of time. Every time Justin shoots a basketball, he overcomes gravity both with the ball and with his body. Now, that doesn't mean that the law has changed, but we can overcome natural laws. Okay, number 5. What was David Hume's objection to miracles, and why was he wrong? So let's turn over to page 205. And here's David Hume's argument, logical argument. It's a little bit more involved. And it says, number 1, natural law is by definition a description of a regular occurrence. Number 2, a miracle is by definition a rare occurrence. The evidence for the regular is always greater than that for the rare. Number 4, a wise man always bases his belief on a greater evidence. Number 5, therefore, a wise man should never believe in miracles. Now, let's go through this. Natural law is by definition a description of a regular occurrence. Is that true? That is true. A miracle is by definition a rare occurrence. Is that true? That is true. Oh, hi, Katie. I want to turn my phone on. And I'm sorry, she's like, don't do this to your mother. Please don't do this to her. She's like a 2-3-word texter and then send, and then 2 or 3 more words and then send. Please just don't, just send your text. So you'll probably hear that song again. So the evidence for the regular is always greater than that for the rare. Is that true? Not necessarily. Not necessarily. Just because something happens rarely. Each of us are human beings, right? We were each born. Is that a rare occurrence? Yes, it was a one-time occurrence. So it isn't necessarily true that the evidence for the regular is better than the evidence for the rare. So what he's saying is that it's unwise to believe in the rare over the regular. But premise 3, that premise that there's always more evidence for the regular than for the rare is not always true. It may happen more often, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the rare is not proven. That rare things that happen rarely are not proven. We rarely have tornadoes. Every day we have some kind of weather, but we rarely have tornadoes. That doesn't mean that the evidence is any less, provable than cloudy days in the winter, which we often have. And then believability is different than possibility. Something can be believable and not possible, but something can be possible and not believable. They're not the same thing. And then probability, again, is separate from evidence. Probability is numbers, not necessarily proof. And then finally, the authors argue that it is a circular argument. So I'm on page 207 toward the bottom. So the issue is not whether an event is regular or rare. The issue is whether we have good evidence for the event. We must weigh evidence for the event in question, not add evidence for all previous events. So we need to look at the occurrence by itself, not try to add evidence based on the past. We're looking at this occurrence and is there evidence for it? So third, Hume is actually arguing in a circle. Instead of evaluating the veracity, the truthfulness, that's what that word means, the truthfulness of the evidence for each miracle claim, Hume rules out belief in miracles in advance because he believes that there is uniform experience against them. As usual, C.S. Lewis has great insight. Now, of course, we must agree with Hume that if there is absolutely uniform experience against miracles, if in other words, they have never happened, why then they never have? Unfortunately, we know the experience against them to be uniform only if we know that all the reports of them are false. And we cannot know all the reports to be false, only if we know already the miracles have never occurred. In fact, we are arguing in this. So nobody can know every purported miracle that has ever occurred. And so we can't say that miracles have never occurred unless we have that information. So pretty deep stuff, but good stuff. Any questions on that? Okay, you have the rest of the hour to begin looking at your study guide and studying for that quiz quest test on Tuesday. And if you have something more pressing to study, that's fine, but I do want you studying